Hey guys, this is Anthony Morganti from AnthonyMorganti.com. This is episode 48 of Lightroom Quick Tips. In this episode, I'm going to tell you how you could change the default values in an external editor. Now, let me try to explain. I have this RAW file. It's a Sony RAW file, and I want to send it to an external editor. And there's various ways you could do that in Lightroom. The way I usually do is I just right-click on the image, and I go down to Edit In, and let's say, for instance, I'm going to send it to On1 Effects. Now, I've been doing some videos recently on On1 software, and that's what prompted this quick tips video. Someone noticed my default settings down here are different than what it is when you purchase On1 Effects. I've changed them. I have the color space set to Pro Photo RGB. When you purchase On1 Effects, the color space will be Adobe RGB, and I have the resolution at 360. Well, how do I get that to be a default value? So every time I right click on an image and I go down to any of my plugins, that this will come out and I don't have to manually change it every time. Well, it's really easy to do, but it's not very intuitive. So let me try to show you. What we're going to do is we're going to go to Lightroom Preferences. If you have a Mac like I do, the Preferences is under the Lightroom menu at the top. If you have a PC, it's under the Edit menu. And what you do is just open up Preferences. Also, it's a keyboard shortcut, Command comma on a Mac or Control comma on a PC, and you'll get to this Preferences dialog. What you want to do is go to the third tab over, External Editing. And you can see right in the middle here we have On1 Effects 10. Let's just say I want to change this one. I'm going to change it back to the way it was when you purchased On1 Effects 10. So Adobe RGB and the resolution of 300. And I'll tell you why I use those values in a minute if you're curious. So we're going to switch it back to this. Now I just switched it here. If I just close this down and right click on the image and go to Edit In and I go to On1 Effects, you could see that it didn't save it. So how do we change it? Well, we'll go back into the preferences and we'll go back. Oops, we want to go to Adobe RGB and 300. Now what we want to do is go to the drop down itself where it says Preset. And at the very, very bottom, you could see Update Preset On1 Effects 10. Just click on that. That's all you had to do. Now we'll close this down. We'll right click, Edit In, On1 Effects 10. And you can see we're back to Adobe RGB with a resolution of 300. So that's how you could edit any of the external editor's default values when you right click on the image. Now I'm going to change this back to the way I had it. Now why do I use a color space of Pro Photo RGB? Well, there's three color spaces available: sRGB, Adobe RGB, and Pro Photo RGB. And it's kind of akin, and sRGB is kind of like a box of 8 crayons, and Adobe RGB is kind of like a box of maybe 12 crayons. And Pro Photo RGB is a box of 24 crayons. Now, those ratios are totally wrong, but the idea I'm trying to give you is that the color space is bigger with a Pro Photo RGB. And when I'm processing an image from the beginning, from a RAW file, I'd like to have as many colors available to me as possible. Now, two things I should mention. I can't see all those colors, and most people can't, but I want them available. I want them there as I'm processing the image. The second thing I want to mention is that if I'm going to print this myself, a lot of paper and ink combinations can't print all those colors either. So it is overkill having it as Pro Photo RGB, but again, it doesn't hurt anything having it available from the beginning, and then when I'm ready to print it, I'll pick the appropriate color space for the paper, ink, and printer I'm using, and and then print the image. If I'm going to post this to the internet, most monitors cannot reproduce anything beyond sRGB. So for external use, like or sending the image to the internet, I would use a color space of sRGB. But again, because I'm editing a RAW file, I'm converting that RAW file into a PSD file. I want as many colors available to me as possible, so I have Pro Photo RGB. Now, resolution of 360, the reason why I use that is I use Epson printer, and I spoke to an Epson rep, and he says they recommend that you use a resolution of 360 for their Epson printers. Now, after he told me that, I've looked all over the internet, searched high and low to find something in writing that said that they recommend a resolution of 360, and I haven't been able to find it. But nonetheless, he told me to use the resolution of 360, and it works well for me. So that's why I put the resolution to 360. Now I'm going to save that. I'm going to just open up that drop down, go down to the bottom, and then it's saved. Now I could right click, go down to Edit In, and On1 Effects, and you can see I'm back to the default the way I like it. So that's it for episode 48. I hope that made sense and it was easy to follow. It's very easy to do. I'd like to thank everyone that watches my videos. I truly do appreciate it. I'll talk to you guys soon.